Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at a brand new Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Drampa. Drampa is a Dragon and Normal type Pokemon with the moveset of Dragon Breath, Fly, and Outrage. Overall, has a pretty nice moveset, and its typing is Dragon Normal, so it is the first Dragon Normal type in Pokemon Go. You can encounter Drampa by doing 3-star raids, either remotely or in person, and today, I'm going to be testing it out in the Open Ultra League to see if it is worth using. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out Drampa in the Open Ultra League. Hopping to the first match, leading Skeledirge into Galarian Weezing. Opponent safe switches into a Jellicent, and they're gonna regret that decision as in comes Drampa. Due to the unique Dragon and Normal typing, Drampa is a complete wall to energy from Jellicent. Whether they're going for the Surf or the Shadow Ball, it's not going to be a problem. I'm looking to farm up with the Drampa and fire off the Fly. It ended up being on charge attack priority. I was trying to throw one turn beforehand, but unfortunately in these sets, the game was stuttering quite a bit, so you may see throwing on alignment a bit more than usual. The Fly is going to allow me to get a farm down here and exit with a Fly that I can use to threaten the Weezing. Opponent is going to send in the Weezing, I'm firing off the Fly, and then I'm actually going to look to switch into the Shadow Dragonite. The Shadow Dragonite is typically going to be the safe switch here, as the goal is going to be to bait out the Fairy type and then punish them with Steel Wing. But in this case, I can just send in the Dragonite. I have very nice fast move pressure here. They go for the Play Rough, they realize they can't make another, and in the back is Shadow Swampert. So Shadow Dragonite just in complete control of this endgame. The Steel Wing's not exerting a lot of fast move pressure here, but the quick energy generation, Dragon Claw after Dragon Claw, the first one connects, the second one shielded, Dragonite already at a third charge attack here. This Dragon Claw is going to be shielded as well. One Shadow Hydro Cannon will not be enough to knock out here. I'm able to withstand that damage no problem. I switch into the Drampa as the opponent fires off their charge attack. And this should just be game over at this point, as I can send in the Dragonite. Opponent tries to go for a snipe with Fairy Winds, but the Shadow Dragonite survives on 1 HP, and Superpower is going to secure the win versus that Shadow Swampert. Hopping into the next match, leading Skeledirge, going up against the opponent's Trevenant. This is an incredible lead for me. The entire team can do pretty solidly against Trevenant. Opponent save switches into Tentacruel, and this is a bit uncomfortable, as this entire team is pretty soft to Tentacruel. I'm going to stay in here with the Skeledirge, fire off the Shadow Ball lands, and I'm going to stay in as my opponent fires off the Scald. Scald is not going to be enough to knock out, so I am going to let that through and then just send in the Dragonite. I'm looking to farm up quite a lot of energy here with the Dragonite, and I'm able to win charge attack priority over the Tentacruel as it makes it to a potential Blizzard. They shield, and since they're shielding, that's a big telegraph that they are going for the Blizzard, so I am going to shield up, and thank goodness I did, as that would absolutely destroy the Dragonite. They're farming up quite a lot of energy in the back. It's Tapu Fini. The Steel Wings are adding up here since they are hitting for neutral damage, and I can fire off superpowers. Opponent is going to no shield. That superpower does quite a lot of damage. They fire off energy. They're forced to throw energy into the Dragonite. That works out great for me, as now I can just send in the Drampa. Drampa, of course, these Dragon Breaths are going to be double resisted, but they still add up, as Tapu Fini does not have a very large HP stat. I'm going to be firing off this Fly. The Fly is going to be shielded, continuing to farm with the Drampa. They're firing off a charge attack, and I have a decision to make. I decide to commit the shield. It's going to be the Surf Bait. I continue to farm. Opponent sends in the Tentacruel. They're unable to make it to the Scald. And now, the moment the opponent sends in the Fini, I just go for the Fly to deny this energy. And Trevenant, like Jellicent, is completely walled here. Their options are a Ghost move, which is double resisted, or a Grass move, which is single resisted. And at this point, the opponent knows there's no beating this Drampa, so they are just going to no shield, and Fly is going to pick up the victory. Hopping into the next match, picking up a bit of a tricky lead, Skeledirge into Giratina. Honestly, since I have Steel Wing on the Dragonite, Giratina is a bit of an awkward Pokemon for this entire team to deal with, and they're on Dragon Breath as well. I'm going to stay in here and fire off this Disarming Voice. That does, or it would have done, a decent amount of damage, but my opponent is going to commit the shield. They overfarm quite a lot, but in my view, this is a mistake. They overfarm too much, as now I'm just going to be able to make it to the Shadow Ball, and the Shadow Ball is going to force a second shield or do massive damage. The Shadow Ball connects, I send in the Dragonite, and I decide to let this go. I am able to withstand this damage, and I'm going to look for the Steel Wing farm down here, getting them low. Opponent, maybe they should have committed to the farm there, because by switching into Registeel, I'm now in a terrific spot with the Dragonite. Dragonite's superpower deals massive damage to the Registeel. They're forced to fire off a Focus Blast 1 turn before my second superpower, and now I can set up Drampa to try and sweep this endgame. I'm going to wait the timer here and send in Drampa. The fast attack Dragon Breath is going to be resisted, but I'm just going to start chipping away at the HP of the Registeel. My goal is, I want to try and throw like 10 more Dragon Breaths and then switch into the Skeledirge and try and snipe with the Incinerate. I send in the Dirge, but they're able to save it at the last second, but Giratina is going to get KO'd before they make a move. In the back, it's Talonflame, and this should just be a win for me here, plain and simple. I fire off the Shadow Ball, that gets the shield. Talonflame is going to leave with a Fly loaded, but a Fly is not going to be able to one-shot. Drampa doesn't have good bulk, so a Fly is going to do a lot of damage, but it's not going to be enough to one-shot. And I can very comfortably make it to 2 charge attacks, and as long as I save the shield for the move from Reggie, this is just a win. Here, honestly, I could have just won with a Fly, but if I had to double move it, I may as well go for the Outrage. Back in comes the Registeel with a charge attack loaded, but with a shield remaining, there's no way for the opponent to get rid of my remaining HP. I'm able to shield the attack, farm down, and take the win. Moving into the next match, leading Skeledirge into Shadow Poliwrath. This is not a bad spot to be in as a Skeledirge whatsoever, as they're able to outpace the opponent. Opponent is going to wait a turn and make a nice catch as they catch the Disarming Voice onto Shadow Drapion. My goal here is just to rebank that energy for later and then send in the Dragonite. The unfortunate thing is my opponent is going to be able to make it to 2 crunches before I make it to a move, but my opponent is going to make a small inaccuracy here. They end up going for a Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb does a ton of damage, don't get me wrong, but it prevents them from forcing a shield. That does get me into farm down range for the Skuntank, and at this point, I see a pretty clear win con, which is just saving all shields for the Skeledirge and just not shielding the Drampa. I send in the Drampa, they're going to be firing off energy here, and that's totally okay with me. The crunch is going to connect, opponent sends in the Poliwrath, and honestly, I'm lucky that they threw their energy here. Had they gone for the counter down, my switch clock was not quite yet up, and I would have been in trouble. Now, Disarming Voice hits for super effective here, but the Shadow Ball does slightly more damage, and why I go for the Shadow Ball ends up being game winning, because the Shadow Ball is going to allow me to actually incinerate down here. I'm going to be able to get a big Incinerate farm down, leave with 100 energy loaded, and with this much energy, I should be able to take the win versus the Skuntank. Because now the Skuntank, it needs 2 charge attacks to get the win, and they just can't get there, as they just hit with Disarming Voice after Disarming Voice after Disarming Voice. So it feels like a bit of an unorthodox play to go for the neutral move, but in that particular instance, the incremental more damage that it does ends up being game winning. Moving into the next match, we see a disastrous lead, leading the Skeledirge into Swampert. I save switch into the Shadow Dragonite. Opponent is going to respond with Pidgeot, and this is probably not a bad spot to be in. I'm going to overfarm and play to charge attack priority here. Dragon Claw does get shielded. I've got a shield, so now I don't need the Dragonite anymore. I'm just going to let this go. Opponent, they went for a Feather Dance bait, and that's really, really good for me. I'm going to look to overfarm massively with the Dragonite. I'm at back-to-back Dragon Claws here. Let's see, can Dragon Claw 2-shot from here? I don't think it can, so I go for the superpower, and my opponent lets me get there. Now I force both shields or take switch. They let it go. I win switch advantage. My opponent, however, since I'm debuffed, is now going to go for an aggressive double-resisted Mudshot farm down with the Swampert. Superpower is going to connect. That's heavily debuffed, so that's not going to do a lot of damage. I send in the Drampa. They let me get 4 Dragon Breaths because they were just like, what is this Pokemon on my screen? Which I can't blame them. It's a really weird looking Pokemon. In the back, it's going to be Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz, definitely a problem for me here, and unfortunately, I mistime my charge attack, and I give them a Snarl for free. And that Snarl, oh boy, Mandibuzz is a Pokemon you really don't want to give extra energy to because it gets to its charge attacks very quickly. Snarl generates a lot of energy, so giving them a free Snarl is definitely going to make my job here a bit harder. I'm going to continue to farm up, go for Disarming Voice after Disarming Voice, continuing to apply pressure to the Mandibuzz. I continue to farm, but they're firing off more energy. They shouldn't be Dark Pulse range quite yet. The Dark Pulse is going to connect. They send in the Swampert. I'm going for the Shadow Ball. Maybe I should have switched, but I wasn't close to a move on the Drampa. And now I'm going to switch. Come on, Drampa. Get to the fly, and we're short by 2 turns, but it's not over yet. Can we incinerate down? This will be close. Skeledirge going for the incinerate down, and we just can't get there, and we lose the game by 1 turn. Very tough lead in the next match. I'm completely core broken here. Skeledirge into the Tapu Fini. My opponent is going to be able to outpace here by 1 turn. They fire off this Surf. I'm just going to no shield, fire off the Shadow Ball, hope they let it go, and then send in the Steel Wing Dragonite. The Shadow Ball does get shielded. They're correctly reading that I'm very, very weak. I'm just going to farm up so much energy here with this Dragonite. They go for the Moonblast. I'm definitely going to respect it. It could be the bait, but it actually isn't. But unfortunately, my opponent gets the Moonblast debuff. I think that's a tiny chance of occurring. It's like 12.5%, but it happens. And now suddenly, my energy is a lot less threatening into the Skeledirge. I'm going to be firing off Dragon Claw after Dragon Claw after Dragon Claw. So much energy here, but due to the debuff, Skeledirge can actually survive the 3rd Dragon Claw. They're not going to be able to make it to back-to-back charge attacks, though. So I will just be able to let this go and get a farm down with the Drampa. Drampa now with a tiny energy advantage, and I know that the Fini is completely dry. They send in the Tapu Fini. I'm farming up a lot of energy here with the Drampa, but I notice this is not enough for a Moonblast. They only go for the Surf, maybe just unfamiliar with Drampa's typing. I continue to farm up here, quite a lot of energy, and unfortunately, I don't get the catch. I was hoping to catch and just save all the energy for later. Let's see what they have in the back. They have a Charizard in the back. When I saw the typing, I thought it was going to be Talon, but that's definitely a Charizard. The Fly gets shielded. I'm able to make it to the Outrage. It all comes down to this. Can this get the one-shot? It does get the one-shot. Tapu Fini gets farmed down, and we take the game. Hopping into the next match, leading Skeledirge into Tentacruel. This is a bit awkward for the team, but I will be able to outpace, but the opponent waits the turn, makes the perfect catch onto Greedent, and suddenly, I'm just in complete shambles. I'm going to send in the Shadow Dragonite, but this is looking very, very tough. The vast majority of these games were done in the Go Battle League, whereas unfortunately, I did end up running out of sets for the day, and with my elo sitting in the mid 3200s, queue times were also a bit of a problem, so when I did eventually run out of sets, I do have a couple battles sprinkled in here that are with members of my Discord, and this is one of them, and what a catch there. I'm just in such a tough spot now. They send in the Guzzlord, I go for the superpower, which will do more damage, it connects, and I'm going to be sending in the Drampa. Drampa looking for the farm down, the Guzzlord, it's extremely low here. It is very, very low. The Dragon Claw connects, and they're going to switch their Tenta as I send in the Skeledirge, but I'm so far behind in terms of energy. They go for the Scald, they don't get the debuff, but they're going to be able to make it to yet another Scald here, and I don't think I'm going to be able to stall out the switch timer long enough to win this game. The Scald does get the debuff, and I think that's basically just a nail in the coffin here. I'm still going to try and play out of this, but I don't really see a path to victory as my switch clock is still 15 seconds from being up. I fire off the Shadow Ball. The Shadow Ball gets shielded. They throw right away, understanding that I'm not able to switch, so timing doesn't matter. The Scald picks up the knockout. In comes the Drampa, but wait, I make the Fly. If this KOs, I can win this. The Fly into the Tentacruel does not KO, and we lose an absolute heartbreaker. Hopping into the final match, and what a lead. Leading Skeledirge into Shadow A-Slash. Opponent safe switches into Giratina. This is the Shadow Claw variant, and to my surprise, they play to charge attack priority. This is a massive risk for the Giratina, as if I didn't throw there, I get 20 free energy from an Incinerate. They fire off the Ancient Power, I'm looking to switch, and they get the Ancient Power boost. Are you kidding me? Oh no, now my Drampa has to deal with boosted damage. They go for a boosted Dragon Claw, and this thing, I mean, to be fair, it is a boosted Dragon Claw, but it's still, Drampa cannot take a hit at all. This thing is not tanky. I'm looking to farm up as much as I possibly can and fire off the Fly. Fly does not get same type attack bonus. I'm hoping it will KO, and it barely does. In comes the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. I'm able to make it to the Outrage. This is resisted, but Drampa, it's all about the attack stat. The Outrage connects, dealing big damage. I'm going to be sending in the Skeledirge here. My opponent throws, and I'm going to shield, because that way the Incinerate will register onto the Sandslash. Let's see what they have in the back. They have Poliwrath, and this, unfortunately, is game over for me. I'm firing off Disarming Voice. That is going to be shielded, continuing to farm up with the Skeledirge, and then my opponent makes a game-losing misplay. They play to a charge attack priority that they do not win. And just like that, I'm back in the game. The opponent's habit of going for CMP ties backfires in a massive way. My Dragonite will be able to make it to a superpower on charge attack priority. This will pick up the knockout. They're close to a move on the Sand Slash, but one Steel Wing picks up the KO, and we take the win. And now some final thoughts on Drampa. First off, its typing is incredibly cool. Being a normal dragon type isn't the type combination that we've seen in Pokemon Go before, so that is quite cool to see. However, I will say its stat product is a bit of an issue. It's very attack weighted, so it can output a lot of damage, but it can't really take hits. And defensively, adding a normal subtyping, while it can help versus ghost types, opens you up to a weakness against fighting types, and being weak to counter, which is arguably the best fast move of the game, is definitely not in its favor. On top of that, its moveset is honestly really good, but the fact that it doesn't get same type attack bonus on Fly really does feel like, unfortunately, Fly feels a bit underwhelming at times. So while I think it could potentially be an interesting Cupmon in the future, as far as the open metas go, I'm not seeing a ton of play for Drampa, just due to the fact that its typing isn't the most favorable for the current meta, but it does end up making a pretty spicy core breaker, and who knows, with future meta shifts, we may see Drampa's moment to shine. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.